Hey everyone, David Safransky here, your host of Financial Revelations. Fresh back from Hawaii. I was working there, and my wife, who's retired, tagged along with me, which is always nice. And I want to let you know, if you go to Hawaii, you should expect things to cost 40 to 50% more than they do if you live in a normal place. If you live in California, it's probably 20% more. If you live in Ohio, it's easily 40% more. The breakfast buffet at the hotel, $50. How good was it? It was a breakfast buffet. How much would it cost here? Maybe $25. When I go to Brazil, that's $12 or $10 in Brazil. So, in any case, at SkiBucks1 on Twitter. You can call here at any time, 1-800-344-2534. All these things are running below me, so you don't have to remember them or write them down. You can hear me on WCRF 103.3 every Thursday morning from 8 to 9. They do record all of our sessions, and they save them there. So if you want to go back, I don't know why you'd want to do this, you could just call here. But you could listen. You could also listen on the app, the Moody Radio App, which is actually really good. And then if you have questions, you could email us, Corey@epsf.com. Our website for the mission strips, we just got an Amazon donation today for $600. That was really nice. And if you want to donate, any amount is appreciated. And I mean that sincerely, any amount. And if you can't give, don't take away from your church to give to the Amazon fund. I don't want you to do that. You could pray for us when we go. We're going in June, and prayer is really helpful. There's a lot of things that we do there. There's a lot of moving parts, literally a lot of moving parts, and a lot of people traveling, and luggage, and planes, and equipment, and people, and a lot has to go right. So if you could lift us up in prayer, that would be great. But you can go to our website, nativosusa.org, and you can see more about the trip, and if you just want to know more about it, if you'd like to go sometime. So, I'm going to talk about something today that we mentioned on the radio this morning, but I'm going to get that in a second because this week, the Fed minutes, so they have a meeting, and then approximately a month later or so, a few weeks later, they put out the notes from that meeting. And those meeting notes came out this week. And it's scaring the market. In fact, as I record this, the Dow, which is not the best measure of the stock market because the Dow is only 30 stocks. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ are a much better measure because in the S&P 500, there's 500 stocks. And the NASDAQ is a very broad base of publicly traded companies. Those are really the best measures of the stock market. But they're getting beat up today, mainly because of these Fed notes. But one of the things that we learned is that there's probably going to be no rate cuts this year, in my opinion. And I have been saying that since last November, December timeframe. I thought that the Fed and Chair Powell really missed an opportunity. We have little Henry. My friend Henry lives in Lakewood. He does a Chair Powell imitation that we play on the radio. It is the funniest thing. And today we played it. And he just happened to be going to school at the time with a bunch of friends in the car. And all of his friends are like, how do you know that guy? How do you know that guy? And mind you, Henry is 12. He said, oh, we're friends. And so his dad texted me, and I said, you know what? We are friends. I love this kid. He does a great Chair Powell, and he knows about economics. He's actually a little economic thinker. This gives me hope for the future. There's also a young lady at the radio station who is staunchly conservative. And when I met her and had a chance to talk with her, I just said, you are giving me a lot of hope for what's to come, because this generation now, I think, is highly confused. Now, I used to be really rough on them, and then I stopped to think about it and all the things that they've been through. So COVID was traumatic for people. Really, it was. In a lot of ways, we got locked down. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't socialize. If you couldn't graduate from high school. They canceled college graduations. A lot of these kids went through 2008 at a relatively young age, and a lot of them saw people that they know and love lose their houses. They might have lost their house in 2008. So they've been through a lot, and they're struggling, but the generation behind them, these people, they're the ones that rescued the flag on the college campuses. And I thought that, man, these are frat guys, and they're like guarding the American flag. And I thought, as a soldier, I love that. I love people who are willing to stand up for something that we believe in. So anyway, no rate cuts this year. Not going to happen. There was actually talk in the minutes about possible rate hikes. Now, I don't think they're going to raise rates, but they're not going Paul Volcker on us because there's too much government debt. You would bankrupt the government. When you think about $35 trillion of debt and you're jacking up the costs on that debt, I don't think they can do it. When Paul Volcker raised rates to 12%, we didn't have anywhere near this debt. It was so much lower. So much lower. Inflation, this is in the notes, is still 2 times the Fed goal. 2 times. They're nowhere close to hitting this number yet. And I think the hardest part is still to come. To go from 9 to 5, which is where I think we're at, from 9 to 5, well, that was easy. That was like the low-hanging fruit. To go from 5 to 2, that's going to be hard because the Biden administration is still spending tons of money, and that's inflationary. They're trying to, the new Green Deal is inherently inflationary because it takes away cheap, renewable, reliable, and easy energy and replaces it with something that's none of the above. That's inflationary. So I was telling people this before, hear me now, believe me later. It's later. We're not getting rate cuts this year. I don't think we're getting rate hikes this year either. If they did one in December, it would be like a toss-out just for the market, but I don't think it's going to happen. We would have to get inflation numbers at sub 3% for 3 months in a row to create a trend. And it's nowhere near that right now. It's nowhere near that right now. And I know the Biden administration is going to release oil from the SPR, Strategic Petroleum Reserve, to lower gas prices going into the election because all they care, this is a bait and switch. They're going to create low gas prices to make people happy and vote for them, and they're going to yank them right out from under you right after election time. We've seen this in California. We've seen it in Chicago. They promise something to get reelected, and then they take it away, and that's what they're going to do to you. They're going to make you drive an EV. And let me tell you right now, EVs suck. I love Tesla. I love the company. They are the Kleenex of EVs. But I was in Tampa last week, and I get picked up at the airport by an Uber, go to a hotel a few miles away, and he's driving an EV. I said, well, how are things going? You busy? He goes, yeah, I'm busy, but I got jammed up today because I had a charge for an hour and a half. Like, oh my gosh, this is the dumbest thing ever. And even he said, this is the dumbest thing ever. He said, I had to wait for somebody to quit charging at a supercharger before I could get in. And he was an hour and a half off the clock because he couldn't move his car. So don't fall for the bait and switch. Don't fall for the loan repayment. Don't fall for this because the minute the election is over, they're going to stick it to you. They're going to stick it to you. The Biden administration is the dumbest administration we've ever had, at least in my lifetime. Far dumber than even Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, a nice man, hired bad people. Joe Biden, not a nice man, also hires really bad people. It's a check the box thing. If you're the right color, the right gender, if you're LGBTQ, these are the boxes that they're trying to check. Now, you could find the best of the best maybe in those communities, but they haven't. They just filled a position, checked a box, moved on, and you get stupidity when you do things like that. So that's where we're at. I talked about the cost of waiting today on WCRF this morning. What's the cost of waiting? So let's say you were, and I have a scenario that I produced on one of our financial planning engines called the cost of delay. And there's this concept called the time value of money, which simply means, it sounds complicated, but it's not. It's just very basic math. The longer you invest, so the sooner you start, the more time that money has to grow, the less you have to save to get to a number. So let's say you wanted $1 million when you retired. You said, well, I could start now or I could start in 10 years. Well, if you start now, you actually have to save a lot less money to get to the $1 million because it's invested longer, even if it's a smaller amount now. So let's say you were age 30, okay? You're age 30. I figured, well, 25 is a little soon to be putting away $10,000 a year, but we do have clients that are younger or thereabouts saving that much and more a year. So you're at age 30, you bought a house, you got married, you're in a position where they have a 401k, and you're putting $10,000 a year. Now, the amount never goes up. $10,000 a year. And you're going to retire when you're 65. If you do that, you have $1,723,000 at age 65. And you're earning an 8% rate of return, which we could do. If you wait 10 years to start that, so you get, instead of doing it at age 30, you do it at age 40. When you retire, you have $992,000. That's a lot less money. That's $800,000 less because you waited 10 years. By foregoing that $100,000 of savings, you've sacrificed $700,000. $700,000. That's the cost of waiting. That's why when I get with people and they say, well, how much, don't I have to save a lot of money to get to retirement? Well, if you wait till you're age 55, yeah, but when people first start saving, I'm way more interested in the habit of savings than the amount of savings. So I figure, if you have a company match or you have your own retirement plan with no company match and you're able to, with the match, and you should always take the free money, even if you don't like the 401k, even if the investment options stink, if they're matching the first 10% up to 3% of your salary or something like that, you should take that because even if it's a bad 401k, it's free money. And I have a simple rule of thumb in finance, always take the free money. But if you can save, if you can get to that $10,000 number, and then think about this. Each year, as you get older, you're going to make more money. So every time you get a rise in income, you dedicated a portion of that rise to saving. So let's say you got $1,000 more a year. I'm just picking a number. You put in an extra $100 a year. Now, I want it to be realistic. I want it to be repeatable. So 100% savings, or as the kids say, hundo P. If you think you're going to do a hundo P, it's not realistic. You're going to live off of some of that money. There should be a reward for your hard work too. So I have no problem with people not saving 100% of their raise unless you really want to, but make it realistic. So if you get a 10% raise, maybe 3 or 4% goes to future savings. The rest gets spent, assimilated into your budget. Then this is also why we have a budget, so that you can afford to save the $10,000. If you know where your expenses are, if you know how you're spending the money, you can arrange your expenses so that you have your retirement savings as just another expense. It's not going to happen on accident. You have to do these things. They're intentional things that we do. So the sooner you start saving, the less you have to save. That should be motivating right there, because if you didn't want to have to save 30% of your paycheck, start earlier and do it consistently. In fact, you should save like people in Chicago vote, early and often. That's how they vote in Chicago, in Georgia, Minnesota, apparently, early and often. Save more money. If you start sooner, to get to that $1.7 million, you need a lot less money. That's the motivating factor. At some point, now I know I'm writing a book called The Sin of Retirement. And somebody just asked me the other day, well, when are you going to retire, Dave? And I thought, well, I don't want to retire. It's not my intention to retire. But things happen. I have a client that they got sick. They had to go on disability. They were forced into retirement. That could happen to me. Now, I try and take good care of myself. I eat okay. I exercise, lift weights, stay strong, do all those things. But sometimes life gets in the way. So I have no intention of retiring. But I probably will change over the years, how much I travel and do things like that for work as I bring other people on. But you may be in a career where you have to retire. So you want to do those things. You want to be able to do and live the standard of life that you become accustomed to, but stay engaged. Maybe the income pressure is off because you have done a good job of saving. The key is you've got to start early. Now, let's say you didn't start early, okay? You're not 30 years old, you're 45, and you haven't saved a lick of money yet. Remember, it's not the amount, it's the habit. So let's get a habit started. I want to encourage people. I want to give people a reason to hope in the future, at least financially. You can still do these things. Now, it's going to take a little bit more, and it's going to take a little bit more work. We might need to work on your budget, but we could do those things. These things are entirely possible. So don't get discouraged. You don't need $1.7 million to retire on. We want $1.7 million to retire on. Not everybody walks away from the job force and never does anything again. In fact, a lot of people choose to go back to work, but in something that they love, really like. Maybe it's an interest that they have that they can get paid for. And it really takes off a lot of pressure. So I just want to put you in the best position to make those things happen, whether you're 30 or 45 or 50 or 55. The key is don't ignore it. Let's get started. You can reach out to us or anybody. If you go to a church, especially bigger churches, there's people in your church who do what I do. You don't need to come here. You could talk to those people, somebody that you know, like, and trust already. Now, of course, if you know me, you're going to love me. I'm a very lovable person. I'm extremely trustworthy and incredibly likable. I really equate it to my boyish good looks and charm. But people gravitate towards me for that reason, as you could tell. Listen, I want to get you started. I want to get you headed in the right direction. That's the important thing. So don't wait. I am David Safransky, a real American, a true red-blooded patriot, and the voice you can trust.